Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the Office of Inclusive Excellence Diversity 360 series. This is our final, well, next to the final program in our series. This is entitled Inclusive Leadership. And I'm so excited for this panel discussion that I'm sure will be a lively discussion. Again, I'm very excited to have you join us. So just going to give you a little household things. This is a panel discussion where we will have three professionals talking about inclusive excellence. For 45 minutes, we'll have a discussion, 15 minutes of Q&A. If you have any questions that you would like to share with the panelists, just send it via chat. I will collect the questions, or maybe you don't have a question until the very end. That's perfectly fine. We will accept the questions at the end as well. Also, as we get into the panel discussion, make sure that your microphones are on mute. I have to remind myself of that sometimes, make sure my cell phone doesn't ring in the background. And also feel free not only to send questions to the discussion, but also if you want to make any comments about it, because we want to know what's on your mind as well pertaining to this topic. So again, I expect just a wonderful discussion around this topic this afternoon. And again, I thank you for coming. And of course, with technical issues, I want to make sure everything is right. So first, I know you're on mute, but can everyone hear me? A thumbs up or hand wave that you can hear me. Awesome, awesome. Okay, well, we will go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Jennifer Birch, Education Outreach and Training Coordinator with the Office of Inclusive Excellence, here today to talk about inclusive excellence, or at least to facilitate the discussion with our panelists here. The reason that we have this particular panel discussion here today is for my love of career and also diversity. My prior background to this, I was working with career services here at Georgia College for about 8 years, and transitioned over here for my love of people and how people work. And so I just combined those two. And we all have heard of people saying that America is becoming more diverse. We're becoming more diverse. That means our workplaces are becoming more diverse. But what does that really look like? How can this be achieved successfully? What have been the challenges trying to move toward an inclusive workforce? And how can we really prepare our students to enter into the workforce where they are looking for people who can work in their inclusive environments? So that is the purpose of today's discussion. And I will now like to introduce our panelists for this afternoon. We have Shanterica Reeves. She is a talent acquisition specialist for Sherwin-Williams. We also have Larry Elmore. He's the Senior Director of Talent Acquisition and Inclusion for Kids 2. And we have Annette Sludge, Board Chair of DEI Council for Global Payments. And I'd like to thank our panelists for taking the time out to share with us issues, well, their thoughts on the topic of inclusive leadership. So I will begin with the first question, and I'll start with Mr. Elmore, and then Ms. Reeves and Ms. Lidge, by all means, Slide. my hand, you can chime in as well. First question, how would you or your organization define inclusive leadership, and how has your organization's culture embraced this style of leadership?
I'll tell you what, Jennifer, thanks first for having me here and being here at Georgia College. You know, one of the things that kids do when we look at inclusive leadership is we probably move away from the term diversity as a whole, and not because we are attempting to whitewash or make it something palatable, but because 60% of our workforce is outside of the US and predominantly in China. So when we start talking about diversity, sometimes that's an American and Western European context, because it means things like LGBTQ, African American, all those things. Well, when we're in China, they don't have any of those. And so then it makes it a very limited conversation, and probably at the core of where we're looking for is we're looking for a greater sense of belonging. Not just do I have 6 of those, 12 of these, and 8 of those, but we're looking for a sense of belonging, and belonging is the feeling and inclusion is the action. And so our leadership and those that we look for people with leadership have to, one, come with that context. So typically we look for leaders that if they have just this Americana kind of leadership style and they can only lead in Dirty Chicken, Mississippi, this probably isn't going to be the right organization for them, because we're global and we really need them to have a global perspective, and not just as a tourist, but a real business person. So we really kind of start there. And so when I'm doing a conversation, most recently with a vice presidential candidate, this guy had a beautiful pedigree, wonderful Ivy League education. And he was going to be very effective if I put him in Milwaukee. But if I put him in Milan or Mozambique, he would have failed. And he was not, for us, an inclusive leader. Not because he didn't have experiences or couldn't grow to that, but because what he deemed as leadership was really more like what John Wayne would have called leadership. And that just doesn't work around the rest of the world. So for us, before you get to talk about can you do the gig technically, that culture fit, and one of the big culture components is, do you have a global perspective? If they don't pass muster on that, they do not pass go to any further communications or conversations within our business. So that's kind of how we look at it and what we do to ensure we keep a really inclusive and global perspective.
What a great intro. It's like, where do I start from there? But a lot of things that he stated, we do piggyback on, because Sherwin-Williams is also global as well. And like he stated, like, diversity is more so how it looks, but inclusion is how it like feels. So with our inclusive leader, we always pinpoint leading with equality, making sure that you're well-rounded and open-minded, and just having that visible commitment to diversity, you know, articulating authentic commitment to diversity, challenging that status quo, holding others accountable, because you want to also be able to translate and convey the emotional and cultural intelligence of your workplace. So just basically making diversity, equity, inclusion like a personal priority. And again, like he stated, a sense of belonging and uniqueness, and just feeling valued as an employee. That means a lot. That goes a long way. Trust, when we have feedback with all of our store managers and sales rep, district leaders, they want to feel valued, that, you know, and Sherwin-Williams is so family oriented. Our stores aren't that big, depending on the sales volume. So we're a very close-knit family. So just being able to be heard and having that voice as well. So that's definitely something that we look for as far as leadership styles of inclusive leadership, for sure with Sherwin.
And I'll round out, I think a lot of what Shannon and Larry have said, I would agree with. I'm with Global Payments, and we're also a global organization with 1,000 employees across the world. And we have partners and clients in over 100 countries. And so when we think about inclusive leadership, it's also from a business perspective. When I first started heading up the council, it was all emotional, right? But you also have to think about, how do you align those business attributes to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And what's the relevance of that, and how do we remain relevant as an organization with DEI as the forefront? Part of it is because we're a global organization with global customers, right? And so as you're thinking about how do you drive diversity, equity, and inclusion, how do you serve your customers? And we won't quote the stats, but we know there's stats that show a diverse, equitable organization has much better production from the bottom line than those that don't. And some of the things our leaders have understood that we need to come and do when we do these like poll surveys, engagement surveys, is, who is a part of our organization? And I think Larry or Shan was saying it. I think of Larry, how we feel in the US may not be how someone feels in Asia Pacific, right? What's important to one person may be very different to another, even geographically in the States, right? What's West Coast is different than Northeast and the needs. So you have to understand who's in your organization, learn about their differences, and then try to apply from that your practices and your principles. So we align that to our business objectives as we go forward.
Yes, it's not easy as the world changes, but hey, this is the evolution that we're in. So my next question would be for, I'll start with Ms. Reeves. What are the characteristics of an inclusive workplace?
Oh, I'm on mute. Okay, so the characteristics of an inclusive workplace. I would say being able to be effective with collaboration. Again, like I reiterated, that emotional and cultural intelligence, because what we may find as a norm may not be a norm for others, like we stated globally. Like if something here in America is a norm, it may not be a norm elsewhere. And just awareness of bias. And sometimes I can also say myself, I'm biased to this situation or to this actual event or anything like that. So just being aware of that and having humility about that. Again, that's also with that visible commitment of just, again, challenging that status quo. Sometimes being, aware of that bias sometimes can make you uncomfortable because you don't know, you're unaware, you don't, so you don't want to come off saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, making the wrong gestures. One place shaking a hand may be rude, but to us, that's the way that we confirm an agreement. So just being aware of those things. I think the biggest thing is having that channel, that not want to say tunnel vision, but that vision of, okay, there's just more than me in this room. There's a lot of people that we need to consider, their feelings, their emotions, just everything that's tied into that. So personally, just to wrap this up, so just making sure that visible commitment is there for diversity, making sure that there's humility there, awareness of your bias, awareness of biases, because again, that's something that we innocently can struggle with because we don't know. And understanding those cultural and emotional differences and just being intelligent of that and just being able to effectively collaborate, because like they say, it's more than one way to skin a cat. So your audience, I have different audiences that I work with every day and different demographics. So just being aware that, one norm for a metropolitan area may not be a norm for that rural area or, things of that nature. So that's pretty much it.
I really, Shan, I hear you. I think one of the pieces for me is I appreciate one, Jennifer, that you've put this in real concrete terms, not just in HRE terms or corporate terms, or just in terms of being cerebral. For me, when we think about inclusion, that it's kind of what are some of the behaviors and the norms that people feel heard and feel welcomed, not just tolerated. And so how can I show up and create an environment, even when I may be awkward because you may come from a different place, but how can I feel that when I am my authentic self, that I'm accepted and not judged? And do I feel valued? And is this a safe place for me? And I don't mean that somebody's going to snatch your purse or anything, but is it emotionally safe? And then am I seen? Am I really seen for Larry? Not just seen as a cog in a wheel to get X work done, but am I seen? Now that's going to be those words or adjectives are really going to come across in different cultures. And yes, But if we get to the core of what really makes us tick and feel valued and included, those are some of the elements that at least that we strive to do. And also kind of take the fluff away from and say, just do this. When you don't know what to do, be authentic and appreciate somebody and remove stuff that makes them feel scared to be themselves.
Yeah, just piggybacking on what you're saying there, Larry. I mean, I think it is about, can I bring my authentic self to work and it be okay, right? You know, there's that layman's term about what is diversity, equity, inclusion called the dance, right? You know, am I invited to the dance? Am I asked to dance? And how much room do I get to dance? And I actually say, do you allow my music to be played, right? Am I really included in the party in a way that I feel included and it's not, you know, a lot of times the quotas is just a check mark, right? I just checked the box. I invited her, or him, but I don't talk to them. They don't play their music. So I think having a safe place that I feel authentic and it's okay to be authentic. And back to the inclusive leadership question, leaders have to set that tone at the top so that then to permeate throughout the organization, you know, from bottom up, from out, and then from the top down. But I agree with you, Larry. If people don't feel safe or don't feel they can bring their authentic self, and what is that authentic self mean? And what does that look like? That comes from back to the part about, you know, active listening, understanding, talking, engaging, both at the micro level and at the macro level to understand what that is.
Jennifer, I guess I've got a question, and you tell me if this would be the right time. If ever all of us agree that these are the right things to do, why aren't they commonly done? So, I mean, right, does anybody gonna say, no, you shouldn't make a safe environment? Nobody's gonna argue, but why aren't they done? And this is now where I would like to know. If they're great things to do, everybody agrees they are, why aren't they?
Cypher, can I give you a thought on that? Or was that question to Jennifer?
Oh, please,
Whoever.
please.
I think we were talking about it before the session started. I think it's hard. And I think it's hard for executives who tend to go straight in. You know, we're a public company. So it's about the shareholder and you go straight into the numbers and the bottom line and how do you launch the product and how do you deliver and how do you keep the system up. And leaders don't have an expertise in that. They're humans just like us. You may be trained specifically, the leaders as a whole or not. And I think, and I know it's going to come up in another question, but I think that emotional intelligence, I think Shannon spoke to it, of a leader connecting emotional intelligence, not emotionally, but emotional intelligence. I need to understand my organization. And my bottom line gets better when I understand who's in my organization and the differences and the value of those differences. That's all great to say. That's hard in practice, right? Which is why companies are now making sure that they're bringing in officers. And I think, you know, when the pandemic hit, I think it was the first time leaders really had to say, well, we had the pandemic and then you had the social events. And I think, you know, leaders for the first time were like, I know I've been saying this, sometimes it's been something to say, but it really is impacting in a real way that I've got to really be intentional and start listening and hearing. But now how do you move that into practice? And it's a journey, right? Just like a product launch is a journey. You start with the building of it, put things out there, didn't quite work, you test it, you got to put it back in. It's the same thing, it's a journey. The key is, are they willing? So the story of you hiring that leader, because you have to have the leaders that are willing and holding themselves and their leaders accountable, or it won't happen. So it's that route from belief to application. I think it's hard to do people.
And Annette, I don't know if it's my end or not, but there's times when I can hear you, and there's times when I don't. So I don't know if it's a microphone. If anyone else is experiencing that?
She's nodding. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
I tend to move around a lot. That might be part of the problem. I'm animated, so I'll try to stay still.
But to piggyback off, oh, I'm sorry.
Shane.
But to piggyback off that question, that is a good question. I know for me being I always say a representation of the younger generation, a lot of it had to do for me was that generational diversity within the office or piece. Like, oh, I don't want to do anything different because this is what they've been doing. So when I started with Sherwin, I was very self-aware, and I made sure that translating that in my interview, like, okay, I know myself and I know what I can bring, you know, like letting her know, like, okay, this is Shan, this is me being authentic, this is me being myself. But I do believe a lot of it has to do, well, not a lot, but some for like younger generation, I've heard with the generational gap that's there, like they've been doing it this way for 20 years and it's been working. But like I said earlier, it's multiple ways to skin a cat. So let's see how we can use another perspective to complete this goal or this task or this initiative. So yeah, and then like, you know, I think with some people, especially again with my generation, I'm gonna keep going back to it, that resistance from it, you know, like once you get the first no, you're like, no, like, okay, I can't do it. Me, for my tactics on stuff that I do, I sometimes include it in whatever I'm working on and then ask for forgiveness later if it's something that they're like, whoa, but at least I have some type of data or some sort of something to back up what I'm trying to execute, just to give them an idea. So I think too, that is something that's kind of, you know, I guess not being considered or considered like, and then also when you have leaders that have been inherited into a position, I say, like with our CEO, he started from the bottom. So he's understanding of, okay, I know what you're going through, or I know, you know, so you can speak to him on the level of, okay, well, he understands because he's been in this position, although he does have other things that he has to look at as far as the metrics, the numbers, the goals. He also understands as you being in this position, okay, I definitely get it. What are ways that we can, you know, channel or do something different to complete whatever we're working toward? So yeah, that's another thing too I wanted to just throw out there.
All great, all good stuff. So kind of like a dotted line to this, what do you believe to be the most important factor of an inclusive leader? What they must have in order to create and maintain a heterogeneous team, and why? And I'll start with Annette.
And let me know, can you hear me? Okay. Okay. And it's back to what I said earlier, Jennifer, really emotional intelligence, right? And finding that practice in how they approach meeting with them. I think that's critical, so that they have to be intentional about that this is as much a priority and objective as whatever the bottom line is objective. And I challenge our leaders to say, when you put your goals and objectives up, this should be in one of the line items, be visible to the organization, that this is an important part that everyone feels a sense of belonging to the organization. And then applying that emotional intelligence throughout. And then I think there's some tactical things, like engagement surveys, like pulse surveys, like conversations among we had quite a few of those during the George Floyd. Real premier speakers invested in to come to the organization and talk about that environment. Those intentional activities, I think, are critical and really display what a leader needs in order to move the DEI journey forward for the organization.
I would say open
Intentional.
Yeah. I would definitely say open-mindedness, to just being open-minded. And for instance, with Sherwin, we are a workforce that we're striving to establish and set a standard where our industry should be. So being transparent, like we are transparent enough to say, like, hey, we're behind on the social media platforms. What can we do to engage, increase engagement and attract I guess, qualified candidates or just a recognizable brand through social media. So just being open-minded and being transparent about, okay, this is what we are strong in, and this is what we may need areas of improvement on. So those are my two biggest things, besides, again, like I can keep reiterating all the time, that visible commitment and being committed to diversity and inclusion and holding people accountable And I think too, with my group, we always have uncomfortable conversations. So we talk about like the use of using underrepresented groups and how does that make someone feel if you want to like categorizing people. So again, yeah, just the transparency, the open-mindedness, and just making sure that you have a group that's, I guess, willing and open to have those uncomfortable conversations. And what can we do going forward to, I guess, set that standard to implement across the board. So I know I work with a lot of different pilot activities. They call me the test trial at work. So I do a lot of different pilot activities just to see if it's going to fail or succeed. And it may fail the first 3 times and succeed the last. So it's just, again, being open-minded and transparent.
You know, I think that Jennifer, you pose a great question that I think is kind of universal for what is a great leader, period. And the first one is, can I trust that person? I don't care how proficient you are. I don't care how many people you've led. If I can't trust you, is you're going to have a hard time leading me. And that's by human nature. And social scientists suggest that in the first 7 minutes of meeting somebody, we determine whether this is a trustworthy or a safe person, or are they deceptive? And that those seven seconds tend to last a long time of how we build a narrative about that individual. And so that trust factor, above all else, if I can't trust you, I don't care what the task is, there's the first issue. The other one is, do you really care about me as a leader? Or do you really just care that I get the job done and use me as a widget or something? So can I trust you? Do you care about me? And are you humble, or are you puffed up? And are you braggadocious? And then the last one is, are you empathetic?
Yeah.
Do you get that? So I have seen countless people that have been proficient as terms of, you know, taking the mountain and getting tasks done, but their team that's behind them is, you know, there's bodies behind them, dead bodies behind them, and they're not trustworthy. And those people, those teams are far less efficient. They take more money, they have higher turnover, they call sick out, and they actually leave. Or even sometimes the worst thing is that someone has quit a job, but their body keeps showing up every day, but they left 5 years ago and they keep still doing the same gig. For me, that's kind of some of the formulas or characteristics around what a real trustworthy leader is that makes them inclusive.
So if you see me nodding my head, it's like, yes. I agree on all counts. So we started out talking about the leader. Let's open back up to the organization. And what do you feel has been some diversity, inclusion, equity, inclusion policies or practices that have succeeded or that has been challenging within your organizations?
I'm sorry. So I'm my main focus are universities for like recent grad and interns. And since I've started, I've noticed areas of opportunity to engage more HBCUs in my area. And so that's where we're having the biggest challenge, because the company's been around since 1886, but we don't have that forefront or face in these different communities. So I've been really reaching out to our different resource groups to see how they can help, and just different leaders on these different campuses to see how we can include them in our talent pipeline, because there's a lot of talent there and we're overlooking that talent for sure. So that's one of my biggest initiatives that I'm pushing for this year, is just having the HBCUs more engaged. It's been very trying, but we are making steps and progress to that as well. And then when a lot of people think of Sherwin-Williams, they think of paint, or as they like to say, slanging paint in the store. So I have trouble, retaining my female candidates as well. They're like, oh no, I don't want to break a nail. I don't want to sweat. I don't want to do any of those things. So just, being that representation is the biggest thing, but it has been a challenge and we're steady working through it, just trying to come up with different ideas that can attract and engage more of our, again, what we don't want to say, but underrepresented groups, so that they can feel more, I guess, belonging to this organization, because I mean, we're global. So that's something I've been working on personally.
Yeah, and I think, Jennifer, for us, we have 4 C's that our company kind of operates from in terms of culture, commerce, community, and career. And I think culturally, we do a pretty good job. We have 4 affinity groups right now and looking to expand. We have an LGBTQ group we call Pride Network. We have Onyx, which is Blacks around the world, right? We have Women's Network, and we have our Veterans Network. So I think we do well there. And we had a really special inclusion celebration week. We've done it for 2 years, and the company around the world really jumped into the activities, a whole week dedicated to initiatives and activities around inclusion and diversity. But I think in our cultural, we do well. I think community, we do well. I think where we struggle is commerce and career. So I think one of our big challenges is the employee life cycle, and especially underrepresented, not only from recruitment, which is the start, but then what's their life cycle through the entire journey of an employee. So even value and all the way out to when they may want to go into a so we're working on some things like sponsorship, very intentional sponsorship initiatives for underrepresented groups, Black and Black women. And then around commerce is really around procurement of partners that may be from underrepresented groups. And I think we're struggling and are really focused as an opportunity for us around those 2 components. And then I think we said it earlier, the whole global, where we're very, US-based organizations, how they see outside of the US and understanding that other part of the world, I think is an opportunity for us as well.
One of the I think one of the many successes I think that we're honored to have had is actually due to Georgia College. That out of this great institution, we were able, 2 years ago, we started an BNI, or what we call belonging and inclusion, or some use DE&I, internship program. And our goal was to make sure that we had a well-represented internship. And that didn't mean that we hired only women, only African-Americans, only Latinos, or LGBT. It meant that our focus were that we went to places that were non-traditional. And I got to tell you, Milledgeville was not a key target, a thriving place that would have naturally shown up. But out of this great institution, we were actually able to hire a killer intern by the name of Alec Gorwitz, that is actually on with us today, who we have he went from internship that will become a full-time HR analyst with us effective upon graduation.
Woohoo!
Right? So we had to put some real skin in this game. We couldn't just say, yep, we want to do window dressing. Yes, look at all these great women. Because quite honestly, Kids 2 looks good by the numbers. We're 65% female. We're 40% women or people of color. We have a very diverse age gap. So on paper, we look good. Our leadership team of directors and above is 45% diverse or gender or female. So all of that by numbers looks good, but that means nothing if you don't put skin in the game. And so for us, we really had to go outside of our little, this is what we do for our team members, but we had to make sure that this is who we were as a brand. So our ecosystem that we have to knit in connective tissue that says, we not only are doing this internally, but this is who we are as a brand. So our supplier diversity, our vendors, our consumers, our customers, and who we give money to, our philanthropy, all have to reflect that. That our advertising has to be reflective of that, but not kind of what happened to P&G. So P&G did all this really great artistry around diversity to only go to their business when you look at their leaders and above is not diverse at all. And the stockholders held them accountable to this. And you did all this great diversity work, yet internally you didn't eat your own cooking. So for us, we also had to say where we're spending our money. And so those elements for us, those things I'm really excited. Here's the areas that we've got to do some growing up to be. That we've got to make sure that what we're calling belonging really translates global and not this an Americanized process. And that's a big deal. And it's a big deal even for those in the US, that because there is a large number of transplants and immigrants, that mindset of that we have in Atlanta, large Latin American population, large Asian American population. So they are coming as if they're from other parts of the world, and we're still speaking to them as if we're from the Wild Wild West in the US. And that just is not feeling very inclusive. And we got some work to do. So little things about how we even think about what LGBTQ is. Well, that's not recognized nor celebrated in China. So why on earth would we ask them to do Pride Month? When literally that could cause them to be engaged with some problems with their government. And we can't do that just because that's the great thing to do. So we will not colonize what belonging and inclusion looks like. But we'll make it relevant. And that's a journey that we're on. And I need you all to, if you got some great ideas on how to do it, please let me know, because you delivered us Alec and he's killing it. So thank you.
Awesome, awesome. And again, congratulations, Alec. So proud. And it kind of, I know we have a few more minutes left. I have on my time 4:36, and I said 45 minutes of discussion, but I knew this discussion was going to get really good and rich. So I may skip over one or two questions so we have time for Q&A. But I definitely want to touch on this. How do the following contribute towards inclusion? Relationship building, empathy, encouraging participation, cognitive bias, and social connection. So you can touch on one or two or all of them if you feel it's important, but we'll start with Shan.
The one that sticks out the most to me would be relationship building. And I say that because our business is based on sales. So without building the relationship with our customer, and our customer brand, 90% are vendors, real estate investors, or maybe if we want to get a little bit intimate, a first-time home buyer that's wanting to paint their home, certain shades of gray or something. That relationship building is one of the biggest things that we look for when it comes to selecting candidates. Are you able to build that relationship? And there's so many different ways that you can build a relationship, by conversation, following up. That's the biggest thing. So that for me, I think sticks out the most, because we are based on sales. Without sales and building that relationship with our customers and our other businesses, and just even in the store or other district managers, other stores, our supply chain, I feel like our business wouldn't be as successful as it is. I know as of last year, we had 4,600 stores in the US. And I know that it's grown because there's a Sherwin-Williams being built down the street from me. And I'm like, oh, that's another one to my territory. That's 111 now for Atlanta. So that really, really sticks out to me. And then I guess I would say encouraging participation, because, why would I say this? Because as I reiterated earlier about like just being aware of those biases, trying to get everyone on board with, okay, these are the new initiatives going forward. How can we increase employee engagement? It hasn't been challenging, but it's been something that's been discussed a lot amongst like all of the, I guess, our employees, our managers, VPs, interns, just having them continuously stay engaged, because the more that they're engaged and they know what's going on internally, to be able to, I guess, execute that personal relationship externally to our vendors or our customer base. So those two really stick out the most to me, of course. And then empathy. And I say this because ever since the pandemic, I guess we found our stores, I don't want to say apologizing, but, especially with shipping, That's been a big thing. I don't know if it's been that for everyone, but with us, you know, we have customers that come to a certain store every week at the same time, every time. You know about their dog, you know about their grandchild, like you have that personal relationship. So to tell them like, hey, you know, we don't have that color in, or we don't have this that you're ordering because of shipping. So being able to build that relationship with the nearest store and saying, hey, look, I have a customer, or I have my vendors in, we don't have what they need. Do you guys have it? You know, taking that time out, hey, I'll go over there and get it for you. You just wait here. So that to me as well, I've been noticing more empathy. And that's something that I talk to my stores when I visit them about: empathy and reassurance. Make sure that's on the forefront, because all the things that are going on are so unforeseen and unpredictable with COVID. Ever since that's happened, it's just so much more common now. So just to make sure that we're still aware that that's something that we need to be mindful of. So yeah, those are the three that stick out to me.
Yeah, I think, Jennifer, for me and for our company, it's one of the key tenets is bias, right? In training on bias. I saw a question in the chat about what do you think about diversity training? And I think it's critical, because we're not experts, you know, by nature. And so we have employed unconscious bias training across the organization. You know, you go from unconscious bias training, you got confirmation bias, you know, where people have these assumptions. You really can't move forward until you can peel back your bias and then look at things in a very transparent way. And so then you can couple that, I think, with empathy. Once you pull back that bias and your assumptions, then couple that with empathy. And then I think socially, because we're a lot of remote, and you obviously saw that during the pandemic, all of a sudden everybody's remote. And how do you, from a social media, both internal and external, connect? And so then I think that social connection, but I'm a big advocate, and I think bias really hinders growth of diversity and transformation of belonging. I love that, Larry, belonging. It really hinders it, because if you already have a mindset, right? I mean, I literally have talked to leaders who said, I have no bias in that. I mean, I hired the best person, but their entire leadership is, you know, all white men. I'm like, this does not translate. And they're almost insulted to say you might need to get some training to understand, because they equate that as a negative. It's just a learning, right? And I think it's important for that. So I'm a real big proponent of really helping people, all people, and we all have bias, and moving forward and beyond your bias. And then I think real transformation.
Yeah. Jennifer, you're asking some hard questions here. So look, I'm gonna narrow it down. I'm going to go with empathy. And I'm going to say empathy will cover a multitude of sins. That if you can just understand what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, that builds your social interaction, your relationship building, even helps you identify even our own biases that are conscious or unconscious. But if you can get to empathy, and empathy sometimes is not natural or innate, and you actually have to be present to be very deliberative about stopping and doing, and it takes work. And sometimes you're just trying to finish that next email or that next task or get to the next meeting. And I don't have the emotional energy to be empathetic right now, because I got to go home and take care of wife, kids, and parents. Whew. But I got to tell you that is, I don't want to say one of the secret ingredients that really does lead to having superpowers around being inclusive.
I think there's a missing word in all those descriptions, Jennifer, and that's intention. Because really,
Yep.
I think going through a belonging and inclusive journey is, you have to be intentional. So all the way back to your first question, if there's no real intention to do it, it really will not happen. Because intention takes care of, like what you say, Larry, where I just want to do the next email and I just need to get my number and I don't care about all that. But intentionally, I'm going to focus differently. And so I think intention is a key play as organizations think about DEI transformation.
Head on.
So great discussion, great information. And I'm going to put a little pin right here and open up the floor for our participants in our discussion here. There was one question that Annette, you have, that you saw in the chat, and I just want to make sure that everyone had a chance to see the question. How do you feel about diversity training? I know some feel it can be negative because folks try to train on the entire topic of diversity, which is huge.
You know, one of the things that for me, I think sometimes diversity training can be kind of a stick, and it can also be alienating in the US for white males. It is sometimes the very place that I've seen in a room that everybody can feel celebrated except a white male. And then it can make them go that they have to remain silent. And if they have a perspective, they either have to be gay or they have to have some other non-piece. But if they are a heterosexual white male, it can be a very sit down and be quiet environment. So you said we can talk, talk freely. Well, I'm doing it now. So guys, here we are. How do we take not just some compulsory training and make it meaningful? Because we all know what it's like where I've got to do this by such and such date, and you click through the model and you haven't retained anything.
Right.
So I get it. Or you go into a part that feels touchy-feely and it talks about diversity. And yep, I checked the box, I got the certificate. Now let me get back to work. The training is great, but as you know, for adult learning theories, that adults don't learn nor retain by that model, that it is by the doing and the interactions. And so for me, that's probably more important or more impactful. I think it's important. I get it. Books are great, all of that, but it's not until you have to have a one-on-one conversation and feel safe that says, as a white heterosexual male, I don't know what it feels like to be ba 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 ba, and they aren't lectured, and they're made to feel okay.
Yeah. I think, again, it's just building that trust. Because I feel like with diversity training, I think is something that has to be something that is done. Like, I think for companies, they just want that contract signed saying like, hey, it's contractual. Like, hey, I understand about this. Now let me go back to work. Because I mean, I've been in that scenario. So I'm like, but actually like I think it's something that needs to be not read upon. Like Larry was saying, it's something that it just happens, transactional throughout the day, like events, different things. So I do and don't agree with diversity training, because it's so transactional, it's so like contractual, like, let me just sign and say, yeah, I understand. And then that's it. Like, there's no more discussion about it. I've been with several companies that the diversity and equity inclusion type, their group doesn't even get recognized. Like, they may send out a ton of emails just discussing like, these are the topics we're going to talk about, or these are what we want you to participate in. And they're like, what is this? This is just another email clogging up my Outlook. I'm going to delete it and move forward. So yeah, that's my whole take on diversity training.
And I'm a little different. I do agree with you, Sam, that sometimes it's just a check mark and then people move on. But I think that's where the intention comes. Because if you do the training and then you do the next, and then you do the application, and then you do what comes behind that, then it's intentional, which is why I go back to that word. Then it's intentional action. Because some people do need to get some understanding, however that training occurs, of what is happening. And I think through pulse surveys, both at the leadership level, which is very different than in your individual benchmarking about how do you feel the company is doing from a diversity versus an employee, and how do you feel in terms of belonging, and then taking action around that, and then intentionally building a process above that. But if you don't do that, to both of your point, it's a wasted, it's a check mark exercise. And you know what? The employees figure that out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to be very careful, because that's the worst thing a company can do. It could just be a check mark exercise and then moving on.
Yeah, and that's a really big problem. Anyone can go in and do training, but it's what's after, and the application, and how are you applying this knowledge into your day-to-day life? The follow-up is so important. Yes. And so yeah, when it comes to just training in general, like, you can't offer training and don't expect anything to come afterwards. Same thing if we're training someone to work on a XYZ equipment. Well, we want to make sure that this person knows how to operate this equipment after they leave this training. So how are we going to do that? So the
Right.
same concept, hard skill versus a soft skill. Did I see another question pop up? Do we have any questions?
I have one, and I would love to hear from the students and employees here who are attending this. Why did you come?
Excellent question. So if anyone, care to answer, if they want to unmute and ask, okay, why did they attend today's event?
Hello, I'm enjoying this very much. I work in the Learning Center, the tutoring center. We have a whole bunch of programs. And just to be honest, Georgia College's student population is extremely wide. But our population in the Learning Center, we have about 150 student employees, is incredibly diverse. It's lovely, wonderful. I love it. And so I'd love to do diversity training, and I'd love to, do it's really great to talk about it up here, but I want to get into how do I really become an inclusive leader in my everyday work, right? So I want to make sure, like you said, Mr. Elmore, that everyone feels like that they belong. That's a big fear of mine, is people to not feel seen, heard. So that's why I'm here, hopefully to learn some good skills.
Awesome. Awesome.
I'll share. Hi, I'm Janice Flay. I work in the Academic Advising Center. I have a child who actually graduated from Georgia College a year ago, a biracial child. And I know from him, as being his mother and also being a staff member here, how he was treated, things that were said, unsaid, and how they hurt without people thinking that it really matters what they say and do, but it does. And just to share an incident, this morning I stopped at the Jet store to buy some gum. There was a Black gentleman in front of me paying with a $20 bill. The white person there at the till went over that $20 bill as if it were a $1,000 bill. It couldn't be marked enough with the little pin. It couldn't be examined enough. She went from person to person to say, is this a good $20 bill?
Mm.
And I was expecting to pay with my card, but I didn't. When my time came, I paid the $20 bill. My whiteness got me through in a second. That $20 bill was not given a second glance. So as being someone who's married to a non-white person, I see with my family how that happens. And then I see how it happened right there in front of me. And I didn't come into work with a good mood today. So I try to remember those times when I'm dealing with people. And the old saying goes, treat people the way that you want to be treated, but I treat people the way I want my family to be treated. So just be aware these kind of aggressions, and I don't even feel like that was a microaggression. It was a macroaggression happened in front of me this morning about 7:15. So that's why I'm at the meeting.
Janice, that was courageous.
That was very courageous. I appreciate
Thank
her
you.
being aware and transparent about that.
I do too.
For sure, because I have a biracial brother, and so he is very don't treat my sister like this, very defensive when it comes to me, and there's any type of unfairness. And I mean, I experienced it a lot. I'm from the Georgia South area from Byron, so I definitely have gone through that a lot. Just when I'm with my brother, they're like, "Who is this?" And so. It's it's courageous for you to speak up on that. And I really, that it just means a lot.
Rebecca, thank you also you could have done the academic route, which is lofty and commendable. Thank you for really going another layer. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
I've really enjoyed this. So interesting, really good.
Unfortunately, I don't have stats, with me on hand, but being in the position that I am, I've had people come into my office, whether it be students, faculty, and staff, with an issue that they're dealing with in their classroom, in the workplace. And it gets, it's very somber to hear these experiences, but they exist. And it's our job to make sure that the people who have been, I don't want to use the victim term, but the people that have been associated with that transgression feel heard and recognized, and making sure that we contact the necessary people in the area to make sure that they are aware of what's going on and to get something done. My motto has always been, if I work somewhere longer than I'm at home, then I have to make sure that I feel at least like I can get along. Because if not, I can stay at home. And I know I feel belong, but I have to make a living. So our workplace environments is more than just where we collect the paycheck. When people do leave jobs, a lot of times they don't leave a job, they leave the people. They love the work, but not the people. So I do just, thank you all, Anita, Larry, and Shan, for this wonderful discussion. I wish it could go on longer, but I know some people were probably getting ready to get off work, but I wanted to at least have some people to come before they get off of work, just to listen to this very, very important topic. Thank you so much for participating and offering your words of insight and wisdom and knowledge. Congratulations again, Alex, for your position. It's so good to hear these stories. And I also like to thank the College of Business, as well as the Career Center, for collaborating with us for this event. I thank you tremendously for your assistance and making sure that I had a list of employers that I can contact. And I think we just hit the home run with our panelists here, giving us great information. So I thank everyone participating in today's workshop. I will be emailing everyone evaluation form. So if you didn't register ahead of time, but you would like to have an evaluation form, please feel free to send your email via chat or to our email address, which is oie@gcsu.edu. And just say, I would like to have an evaluation form for the Inclusive Leadership panel event. So again, thank you all. I can't thank you enough. And please, for our GC community, look forward to some other great content coming up in April, where we'll do some more about microaggressions. So I am looking forward to that particular workshop event. So please be safe no matter where you are, and have a great day.
Everybody.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everyone. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.